Welcome to the Week 11 wrap-up here at this 17th season of Blood, Sweat, and Beers. One more in and one definitely out. But before we get to that, I wanted to address something that was mentioned in the chat about kickers and the importance of, or maybe the impact that our scoring changes have had on kickers. How much of an impact do you think it's had? Do you think kickers are scoring too many more points? We know that they are scoring more points. That was the whole reason why we made the change. But let me give you some numbers that maybe puts into perspective the actual change that we've seen, the impact that those scoring changes have made. I honestly thought it would be a lot more than this. But if we look back to last year, the 2024 season, with our scoring the way that it was last year, the number one kicker, Chris Boswell, averaged 10.8 points per game over the course of the season. So far through 11 weeks this year, the number one kicker with our new scoring changes, FYI, also Chris Boswell, is averaging 13.7. That's just less than 3 points per game more. Now, that could just be an anomaly, right? It's just the number one. Let's take it down to, I wanted number 10, but it was surprisingly difficult to get the top 10. But I got to 9. So the number 9 kicker from last year, the 2024 season, with those scoring rules in place, averaged 8.2. Through 11 weeks this year, the number 9 kicker is averaging 11.4, just over 3 points average per game. That's the spread. We gave kickers an average of 1 extra field goal every week. Now, sometimes that means they're kicking into the 20s. Sometimes, though, we're still seeing 4s and 5s and 6s. So I don't think we've overvalued at 3 points on average per game, but they still have the ability to completely bust depending on what the offense does. So does 3 points make a difference? Was that change worth it? Well, let me know. I'd be interested to hear. Let's go and take a look at the scores from this past week. Our first score, Jersey Birds versus York Commish. Jersey Birds stumbled a little bit. That was not a great game. His running backs did well, but really nobody else did. In fact, Lamar Jackson ends up negative on the day. Nobody saw that coming, although I'm sure John is very, very happy that was the case. That is bad for fantasy, obviously. And without very much on the bench, as you see, he just left 3 points there. Managed the roster that he had well. Just wasn't a good roster this week. Commish, on the other hand, gets a much-needed win to try to keep pace with the suddenly surging Alex Billy, who has found points late in the season, which is always a recipe for some fun in the playoffs. But left 20 points or so on the bench, but it was enough, coming in right around the average of the winning scorers this week. So gets back above 500 with a good look for the playoffs with just 3 weeks left. Our next game, we see our champ who, has acknowledged himself he done messed up. This was the matchup of the week going in. 10-game win streak on the line to tie the best that we've seen over the course of the league of league history, which is Joe's, right? Joe keeps his 10-game win streak intact as the best that we've seen. He got revenge for that game earlier where the champ blew him out fairly well, right? Rolling with Tua as your quarterback, that was a bold move. Some might call it hubris. I would never do that. But that was a bold move for sure. Anyone other than Josh Allen, frankly, would have been a loss, though, as you look to see what was on the bench. Even 100% would not have been enough to take Joe down. Joe not only keeps his 10-game win streak, best that the league's ever seen, but he moves up to just a single game out of first place in the West Division and possibly just a single game out of the number one seed. With 3 weeks left, that could get really interesting. Our next game, we see Keith versus Poncho there. boy, that was a rough one for Pancho too. He continues to struggle. Just barely gets over 100, so that he hasn't been under 100 all year, but has still been hovering very close to 100. Even with Henderson, 30 plus points, it just continues to struggle. You see, didn't manage his roster all that well, but it wouldn't have been enough no matter what he did. Keith, on the other hand, he benefits from the 49ers, Kittle, McCaffrey, and from the Broncos defense. Had a decent score, manages his roster very well, bumps up his surprising playoff chances as he heads into the last few weeks of the season. Our next game, London really is falling. Bad for Hoffman. Continues to struggle. Posts his league-leading second score under 100 this week, unfortunately. Not much on the bench either. You see what was possible. Yet another game where best roster could not have secured the win. And we look at what Alex Billy had on tap there. This is interesting. So obviously, terrible roster management, or at least some crazy flyers on his bench that scored tons of points. But not only does he get the win, but he has the highest potential score on the season at 234.5. That would have been a high score. In fact, that would have almost been the all-time high score had he managed a perfect roster. Nearly has the most points left on the bench this season, although Hoffman did that earlier a few weeks ago. 114 points on the bench would have given him the high score, but he is now on a bit of a roll himself, getting above 500. As we look at our final game of the week, Beg Your Parsons Whiskey Business, Don Chris, Seth Mike going at it. This wasn't much of a game either. Another rough game for Don Chris. You see terrible roster management, but again, it wouldn't have mattered. Most of the games played out that way. It wouldn't have mattered what anybody did, and no matter what, the 100%, if you lost, you would have lost no matter what happened. But again, sub 100 points there for Beg Your Parson. And this is where Seth Mike benefits from not only another really low score, and we'll see how that affects the standings or the stats on the season, but Josh Allen. What a beast that guy was. In fact, I just ran the numbers. All 9 other quarterbacks combined this week scored 70 points. Josh Allen scored 53. Tough to beat that, right? Tough to come back from that. So Seth Mike maintains his one-game lead in the East, and by virtue of that gets the number 2 seed as we look ahead to the playoffs going forward. Now, as we look at our standings, how everything shakes up at this point, well, Joe punched his ticket. Joe is now locked himself into the playoffs, and unfortunately, Hoffman has now gotten... he's now out of the playoffs. He has been officially eliminated. So those are the 2 big things that happened. Even with his win, Seth Mike is still not locked in his playoff spot. It just has not stayed far enough ahead of everyone else. And even good old Pancho still has a chance. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, 3 weeks left. Everybody but Hoffman still has a lot to play for. So looking at our stats for cumulative here through the 3 weeks left, through the 11 weeks that we have. Despite the loss and the low score, your reigning champ still stays at the top. He's still got the number 1 seed, and as we'll see, still has most points scored. Hoffman goes back, situates himself back in the number 10 spot with that sub 100 point performance. And as you see, because of the rough game that Don Chris had, the gap between the most points against and the least points against continues to grow. It's kind of crazy at this point. It is nearly 32 points per game difference between what Seth has had to deal with and what Harrison has had to deal with. And again, when you're not scoring points, you're not going to really win anyway. But man, that's pretty rough to have to fight 32 extra points a game on average through 11 weeks of the season compared to the number one team in the East. But Seth's still scoring. Seth's still winning games. We'll see if he can stay in that number 2 spot and make some noise in the playoffs. As we look at our pop, our arbitrary statistic that doesn't mean anything, we see a little shakeup at the top, right? Ian jumps up to the number 1 spot. He and Joe get over 91% now, and your champ drops down to number 3, and everything below that, well, that doesn't really matter. Let's look at our power rankings now. Kamish and Keith each gain a spot, move up just a little bit. Ian drops 2 spots after that difficult loss that he took, and well, really, Joe and Seth Mike just kind of swap spots there for them. So that's how our power rankings shake out, or that's where they are here after 11 weeks. Games to watch this coming week. Well, there's 2 matchups that have a pretty significant effect, or could have a significant effect in the West. So Alex Billy surging ahead, trying to keep pace with Joe as the number 2. Well, he's going up against Joe, who's trying to keep pace with Aaron at the number 1 spot. So as those guys battle it out, if Alex Billy drops another game, thankfully your Kamish is playing the lowest scoring team on the year. So assuming there's no 180 point explosion from Hoffman's team, there's a pretty good chance that Alex Billy's now trying to keep pace with your Kamish. So we'll see if he's able to do that. On the flip side, as we look over at Whiskey Business and Jersey Birds, so Battle of the Mileys again. Again, just reiterating, you could not have both gone undefeated. Anyway, Battle of the Mileys, this is important because Seth's just 1 game ahead of both Ian and Keith. This could actually vault Keith into the number 1 spot if he were to win and Seth were to lose, depending on the points that were scored. So watch for the Battle of the Mileys and see how the top, how that shakes out in the East, which will have significant playoff implications as we go forward. Enjoy Week 12.